Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a 1973 Honda Civic. Now, as you can see, I have already made a pretty substantial amount of progress building this car. And I realize I should have probably filmed, a long time ago. But in reality, I've maybe only got 10-15 hours into building this car. So you didn't miss a ton. Now, you did miss some of the fun stuff. We have already gutted the car for the most part. Already got the old engine out. It's sitting there with a big pile of other random parts that are out of the car now. And all of the interior, well, most of the interior, is pulled out at this point, because we will need to make some pretty significant changes. Not everything that I have to take out is out yet, but rear suspension is out, and gas tank's out. Pretty much all the major components are removed at this point. Now, I will say you didn't miss much. That really took very little amount of time. This little car came apart much easier than a lot of the new vehicles that I have to work on a daily basis. So this thing was quite a treat to work with. The car doesn't have that many miles on it. So there wasn't a lot of rust, there wasn't a lot of road grime. Pretty much everything came loose pretty easy. So this is the frame we'll be using. This is off of a 1947 to 1954, I believe, Chevrolet truck. As you can see, I have already started the shortening process. This is the section that I cut out. It's about 2 feet or so, and it was a substantial amount. Whenever you see how long it was before and how long it is now, it's a pretty substantial amount. You should know that whenever this car popped up for sale, I let it sit on the market for a month before I finally went and looked at it. I told myself, that's a really cool car. I would love to have a first generation Civic, and the first generation Civic is just cool to me. They are such a cute little car that is so lightweight, and I just like the way they look. And like I said, I've had my fair share of Honda Civics in my time, and they kind of have a special place in my heart. So when this popped up, it was the only one I had ever seen pop up for sale. And I thought to myself, well, I really don't need it. I don't need another project car. I've had so many. So, well, I let it sit. A month later, nobody had bought it. So the guy listed it for, I want to say it was $2,000. And it didn't run. A lot of the parts were separate in the back of the car. He said that the wheels were locked up, the hubs were locked up, or the brakes, whatever. He said something was locked up. And the car had no keys to it, so we couldn't even try and do anything with it. But it did have a clean title. So after a month, it had price had lowered on it drastically. It started off at $2,000, I believe, and then it went down to $1,000. And then I think it started going down to like 800 or something like that. Long story short, I went and looked at it and decided, well, I don't really care how rough it is. I'll buy it for 600 bucks. So he took $600 and loaded it up on the trailer and brought it home. And it sat for, at least a year. Sat in the parking lot for at least a year or so before I finally decided this was the project. This was what we're going to do. We're going to build it into a little street freak gasser. I will say that I did get the car running. This engine that I pulled out of it does run. It has extreme amounts of blow-by, but it does run. I got keys made for it, and I fixed all the brakes that were dragging or stuck on. And I put a master cylinder on it off of a newer Honda Civic to get it to have brakes. And then I needed brake hoses, and nobody could get brake hoses. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to keep this car, I might as well re-ring it and put new oversized pistons in it. You can't get rings, you can't get pistons. Well, at least I couldn't find any. And so I was like, you know what? I like this car, but I really don't want to have to deal with this amount of frustration when it comes to getting parts. And at that, I really didn't think the car was that cool anymore with the stock 1.2 liter that made maybe 50 horsepower. Was it cool? Yeah. Was it neat? Yeah. Is it my flavor? No. So we decided to start building something that was my flavor. I've always wanted to build a 4.3 liter V6. This particular one came out of an S10, I believe it was in 1989. Uh, just a standard issue, no, fancy high output or nothing like that. Just a regular old throttle body injected 4.3 V6. Got this one at the junkyard. Junkyard said it was a bad engine, so I decided to pick it up. If you're in junkyards, anything like my junkyard, bad engines are a lot cheaper than good engines. So, and sometimes good engines aren't actually good engines. So I decided to take my gamble and buy this 4.3. And let me tell you, I'm pretty happy with it. So far, I haven't found anything major wrong with it. The crank is over there, and it seems to be in pretty good shape. No spun bearings or nothing like that. All of the journals look to be in pretty good shape. It is a heavy crank. From my understanding, a lightweight crank will have a hole drilled right here in this first little journal, um, and this doesn't have that. And it is a Romulus crank, for those of you who know what I mean by that. Not that that really makes a difference. I don't really know. I'm just telling you what I got. And of course, this is a roller cam engine, which is great because I can just buy a roller cam for it and reuse a lot of that stuff so that I don't have to spin it on a leg to have a roller cam. So the plan with this thing is to just rebuild it, use the stock components. I will have to get different pistons. Every single one of these pistons has been damaged. This engine obviously got pretty hot or was heavily abused. I really don't know how this happened, but all of the first piston rings on these pistons, the top ring, every last one of them was broken. And not just in one place, in multiple places. Whenever I would pull the piston out, the piston ring would just fall out like gravel. So all of the pistons are damaged because of that. All of the piston rings butted up and pushed up on the top of the piston and broke the piston. So they're no good. But surprisingly, the cylinder walls look to be in really good shape. There's no heavy scratches or anything like that in them. And we're going to bore it out anyway. So, oh well. But most of all the parts that we needed came with this engine. So I'm very happy about that. And so that's going to be our first engine we build for this thing. I will probably put aftermarket connecting rods. That's probably about where the building it up part's going to stop. Of course, typical stuff, I'll get at least a halfway decent piston to put in it and gap the rings to suit the amount of boost that we'll be running. So for the boost, we are planning on running a BDS kit, 471 supercharger. I didn't really want to buy that just yet, but they're the only company I know of that still produces a 4.3 kit. So I decided, and they continued to raise their prices. So I decided just go ahead and buy it and get that out of the way. Because the last thing I want to do is build this thing completely and then you go to buy a supercharger and they say, actually, we don't produce those anymore. So got one while I still can. And hopefully all the little components of the kit will last forever. And if I ever need to buy another supercharger, well, I think I can find another 471 supercharger. That's the plan. I know there's going to be some folks out there, they're going to be upset that I'm cutting this car up. And to you, I say, you should have bought it. If you wanted it so bad, you should have bought it because it was listed for a long time. That and, it's not like there's none of these cars in museums or anything like that. There's, they've been preserved. And let's be honest, I would have loved to have built a 55 Chevy two-door post or an early Chevy 2 Nova or something like that, but I can't afford one of those. All these American big muscle car guys, they all will pay ridiculous prices and think their cars are worth ridiculous prices. And to be honest with you, I can build a hot rod with all these parts and whatnot for such a small amount of money compared to what it would be to build a 55 Chevy or an early Chevy 2 Nova or I don't know, anything else, pretty much. An old Willys, whatever it be. And at the end of the day, I think this car will still be, in my opinion, cooler just because it's different. How many shows you go to and you see the same thing, you see the same cars. When was the last time you saw a 73 Civic at a car show? And when did the last time you saw a 73 Civic gasser with a 4.3 V6 blown with BDS supercharger that can pop wheelies? I didn't think so. So, that's the plan. Follow me along as we continue this build. Like and subscribe and click the bell.